even when your South African resident is paid from Google Ireland or Facebook in the US, SARS are able to actually have sight of all of those payments through the respective automatic exchanges of information with various revenue authorities across the world.
So that clearly means then that we have much to be aware of, especially from an influencer perspective. Social media influencers, content creators, and the like, all of those operating in the digital economy are now going to be the focus of the South African Revenue Services, and that is what we're focusing on in our personal finance segment this week. We're going to be taking a look at the latest announcement by the South African Revenue Services to put a greater emphasis on the digital economy and collecting the revenues from that space. Joined on the line by the Associate Director and Head of Strategic Engagement at Tax Consulting SA, Jeshwin Baiju, to take a look at this and see what to make of it. Jeshwin, thanks so much for taking the time. SARS clearly doesn't want to be left behind the curve in any front, especially when it comes to the digital economy. And they've announced that they are going to be coming after all sorts of income. What have they declared as what they constitute as income?
Thank you for having me on tonight. And the first thing that we must be cognizant of is that Section 1 of the Income Tax Act does define gross income. And it very clearly says, well, in relation to any year or period of assessment, in the case of any resident, and that would include your social media influencers, the gross income is the total amount received in cash or otherwise and in favor of such residents. Now, that would include things like free trips, certain free merchandise from endorsements, so on and so forth.
Jeshwin, if I'm not mistaken, and my tax knowledge might be a bit rusty from my varsity days, that also says from all sources around the world. So not just limited to income in South Africa or income generated in South Africa. It would be on worldwide sourced income. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So remember, South Africa does follow a residency-based system of taxation. And what that means is for all South African residents, they are taxed on their worldwide income. Whereas the flip side is for non-residents, they would be taxed only on South African sourced income.
So, Jeshwin, let's look at this practically from a digital content creator, an influencer, digital nomad's perspective. You're a South African resident, whether you're working outside of South Africa, traveling with your work or whatever it is, you're still classified as a South African resident. You are now then liable from a tax perspective to declare what it is that you are being remunerated in, whether, as you said, whether it's in monetary terms, in products, in travel, anything of that sort. This makes it very, very complicated for people to keep track of. How do you now navigate this as someone who potentially doesn't have a tax advisor, who doesn't understand all of these regulations and legislations?
So, step one. Obviously, if your social media influencer intends to make it big, they should probably get a tax advisor proactively. And the reason I say that is, well, there's an element of tax planning that may involve offshore planning for the individual concerned. And being part of the gig economy, well, SARS is clearly saying, well, listen, our legal mandate is to collect all revenue that is due to the state, improve tax compliance, and facilitate legitimate trade. So one is record keeping, very important. And it's the same when you think of things like logbooks. I mean, there was recently just a judgment passed for a mining company where there was no proper documentary records, and that's the logbook. So one, they should keep proper documentary records. Two, there is a lot of content surrounding tax education, especially the basics, that can be found online. I mean, even on our side, as a tax practice, we do actually deliver educational webinars and classes and things like that to tax practitioners, to taxpayers, because we are aware that there is a massive gap in tax education in the country.
Jeshwin, I want to take a look at the platform side of it. A lot of particularly South African content creators, African content creators in general as well, don't get the same revenue deals and revenue payouts from a platform such as a YouTube, a TikTok, or other social platforms as other content creators might get. And therefore, some of their revenues come from things like brand deals, things like merchandise arrangements and all of that. Let's perhaps get into that and kind of drawing the distinction, because in the eyes of the South African Revenue Services, whether it's a lunch that's been paid for by someone else or whether it's a check that's gone into your account, they could realistically look at that as both income.
Correct. So SARS's view currently, and they've made that quite clear. They did a press release, I think it was late last week, and they've accepted that while social influencers, that segment for tax collection purposes has its own nuances, but in principle, it is no different to other taxpayer segments where income must be disclosed, similar to freelance work. And they've gone further to actually say that while influencers are encouraged to declare income earned from, and now they've actually gone into the specifics, brand collaboration, sponsored content, affiliate marketing, and this is whether they have been paid in cash, products, or services. Now, for them to obviously track that's a different discussion. But they're of the position that while there'll be a voluntary disclosure by these individuals, by these influencers, and that falls back to them actually knowing their tax obligations. Now, as much as you say the South African influencer is not paid the same as, I don't know, someone from the States, like a Logan Paul, as an example, very, very well known, started off as an influencer. But even that remuneration, your South African resident is paid from Google Ireland or Facebook in the US, SARS are able to actually have sight of all of those payments through the respective automatic exchanges of information with various revenue authorities across the world.
So that clearly means then that we have much to be aware of, especially from an influencer perspective. And if you are in this particular situation and you find yourself as a content creator, as a digital collaborator in this day and age, you might want to have a conversation with a tax specialist around how you navigate this new development or these interesting times that you find ourselves in. Thank you so much to Jashwin Baiju for those insights and for the time. Associate Director and Head of Strategic Engagement at a Tax Consulting SA.